to wrap it up with this Power 5 preview, I wanted to ask you guys, and maybe just name 2-3 guys that you think are the most, the most impactful transfers this season, because we saw a lot of teams go, a lot of guys transfer. I think it was Bama's got a few. They're doing that every year. USC obviously has a bunch. Notre Dame has a couple notable ones. Guys, I think who is it? I think someone transferred. Oh yeah, from Georgia to Bama. But for you guys, who are 2 or 3 names that really stand out in terms of guys that went through the transfer portal?
I mean, I think you were just staying on one there with Jermaine Burton, Georgia, Alabama. Like, I thought he's got unreal speed. Like, he's going to come in and immediately kind of be that Jameson Williams for that offense. Like, I mean, and they also added, I believe it's Tyler Harrell from Louisville, who's also known speedster. That kind of struggled with injuries and depth chart stuff there at Louisville, but I'm very excited for Jermaine Burton. I think he's going to have a breakout year. Now he has someone consistently good at quarterback. Not to throw any shade to Stetson Bennett, but he's no Bryce Young. But yeah, and I'm very excited for Jermaine Burton this year.
Yeah, I think I gave my number one already away to this question with Cameron Ward earlier. Picking him for the Heisman, I think was enough to put him at number one in my list. I think another guy, though, is Eli Ricks for Alabama, former 5-star cornerback who transferred from LSU. The one question Bama had, and I think you saw in the national championship, is when one of their 2 starting corners got hurt, they didn't have much depth. They had to throw in a JUCO guy who really didn't have a lot of experience. Now you get to pair a Josh Jobe, or so whoever takes that number one spot with an Eli Ricks, who is dominating over at LSU and really and truly outperformed a guy named Derek Stingley last year, who was the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. And Eli Ricks was the number 1 corner for them, even over Stingley last season. So I think to add him to that Bama defense is disgusting. And another guy that, an honorable mention just actually happened, and it was I believe how you pronounce it is Eyabi Anoma.
Oh, yeah. I just saw he went to Michigan.
Yeah, former 5-star Bama player. He was down at UT Martin. Our publication because we cover FCS, our publication, he was a first-team all-conference player on our list before the season for UT Martin. He got an opportunity to really redeem himself at the next level. He's a great story of a guy who went to college and didn't have the guidance that he needed, and that college adjustment was really hard and it really overwhelmed him. Getting down to UT Martin, getting his life together, maturing as a man, really put him in a good headspace. And for Michigan to land him, I think the potential for him to go in there and be an immediate contributor is there. But Brandon Joseph to Notre Dame at that safety spot was huge, especially when you look at the loss of Kyle Hamilton. When you're looking at transfers that fill an immediate need, I think Brandon Joseph, who was all world at Northwestern, is going to be a huge piece to that Notre Dame defense. And when you get a coach like a Marcus Freeman who specializes in developing those players in those spots, Brandon Joseph made a great decision. I think Brandon Joseph has a chance to be one of the best defensive backs this year in college football.
Gosh, you named a lot of the ones I like too. Oh, man. I guess one more guy is Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. He's coming over from Colorado, and I noticed there was a lot of hype on this guy early in the offseason. I was like, wonder why, because I remember going back and watching Blackman and not thinking, Colorado. Colorado wasn't that impressive last year, but like Christian Gonzalez probably had some of the stickiest coverage last year. Great closing speed. Like, it makes all the sense in the world that he decided to move to a more prolific school that could utilize his talents, where he could be put on notice. And I think that's a guy that's probably going to put a lot of people on notice when it comes draft time, at least.
Yeah, you guys got some real interesting guys there. But a couple other guys I had that just interested me in terms of some people were Jahmyr Gibbs. He's potentially going to be the starting running back at Bama. So anytime you got a starting running back at Bama, you always got to kind of pay attention to the numbers that they could potentially put up there, and the draft where they could end up getting drafted down the road. I will say my favorite guy, just watching a little bit of quarterbacks last year, watching Kenny Pickett. My favorite guy, and I've talked a lot about these USC guys, but I'm not going to talk about Caleb Williams too much. But Jordan Addison last year at Pitt was very, very special. And I was not a big Kenny Pickett guy. I didn't think he was a true first rounder. Now, granted, the quarterback class was not good. There wasn't much talent there, so I understand the pick. But I thought it was Addison that's really the guy that kind of propelled Kenny Pickett's draft stock. And that's not to knock Kenny Pickett, but I just think he was that special of a player. So it is exciting there. I like him a bunch. The other guy that you guys brought up was Brandon Joseph, and that's a guy I think that could be, one of the defensive breakout candidates of the year, just to be an amazing player. But I don't know, where do you guys have Addison? And I don't know. I think there was the only other guy I mentioned was who was it? Not Travis. Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't want to do two Bama players. I didn't want to. I didn't want to give them that. Pull the Heisman committee there. I didn't want to invite two Bama players into my list, but yeah, Gibbs is legit. I mean, one of my good friends was covered Georgia Tech for 247, and he told me about Gibbs before his freshman year. As soon as he got to camp, he texted me and said, "Listen, number 21 is legit." He was like, "Just turn on the tape and watch this kid." And he came out, and you got to look at that Georgia Tech team was not very good. And now that he gets to play behind a real offensive line and have a real, because everyone's going to focus on Bryce Young. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, who can be a factor in the pass game, and you got a guy who can run between the tackles and break things outside. Bama lacked an explosive running back last year, and they solved it with Jahmyr Gibbs. And for Jordan Addison, it's going to be a big year for him, because I think some people are torn. Was it Pickett? Was it Addison? Was the scheme? If he goes out to USC and doesn't live up to the hype, that's going to be a huge, huge knock for him. But if he goes out there and balls out, like I personally think he can, I think it was probably 50. I did like Pickett in college. I think it was a great college quarterback. We'll see what he does with the Steelers, but I want to see how he does with Caleb Williams. So I think Pickett is still is a more developed passer right now than Caleb Williams is. And I'm going to be very interested to see how he fits into Lincoln Riley's scheme year one, with one more year left to, potentially get to the NFL draft and be a first round pick, which I think if he was eligible to go last year, he could have been.
Yeah, Jordan Addison, I think he's still going to see his deep shots regardless. I mean, he's just got speed that kills. Jahmyr Gibbs, that's the one guy that I just don't know how he fits into Alabama. They're so used to these big bruisers between the tackles, and now they got this guy that's just so good out in space. I'm just curious how they're going to utilize him. And I mean, it's Alabama. I imagine they're going to utilize him well, but it's just a difference in philosophy from what they've typically done.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually we see the Najee Harris, Derrick Henry types, where it's like, oh, I've never seen a guy look like, and I've never seen an athlete look like this before. Oh, this is the new best athlete I've ever seen in football. It feels like sometimes, or at least in
Brian Robinson looking like a linebacker.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's going to be used a lot more like TJ Yeldon was. If you guys remember when TJ Yeldon was the main guy for Alabama, you're going to see him used a lot more out in space, where they just gave him the ball and allowed Yeldon to go make plays. And I think with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think he has a little bit more physicality than people give him, but I don't think he had a chance at Georgia Tech to show it. I think, and also Bama's always been running back by committee too, even with Henry and some of those guys always rotating. So I think the biggest thing for Gibbs is trying to make an impact when he gets those carries and try to be that RB1, because we know with Saban, if you aren't hitting at the right time, he's going to go with the hot hand. And if Jahmyr Gibbs can't live up to that, he potentially could fall down in the depth chart that is really, really deep for Alabama.
Yeah, I think that kind of plays into how Gibbs played at Georgia Tech, where it's like, if I don't take this 20, 30, 40 yards, then, well, the drive's over and we're going to be down by 14 or down by 20. Like, he was just used to that situation. And now you come to Bama, where you're not going to have that necessarily that type of like burden on you. That's like, okay, we're just going to get you out in space. You go do work. Oh, wow, this is way more space than I'm accustomed to. This is nice. So it'll be nice to see how he works out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did realize I accidentally forgot one other guy, but Quinn Ewers just he was a transfer to Texas, and he was actually named the starter, I believe, today. I do kind of wonder, like, I mean, we see Texas every year. Very disappointing. It feels like every single season. Texas fans, they get pumped. They're like, oh yeah, this is the year, we made these changes. This happened, that happened. And it always feels like it's just not enough, and they're not very good, at least in my lifetime. They've not been very good in my lifetime. But is this a guy that could potentially make some noise? You have a superstar running back. That's helping a lot, right? Like, Is he a guy? What are you thinking, Zach? You look a little concerned.
Okay, if he lives up to what I saw in high school, because listen, his high school tape is immaculate. I mean, there's a reason he was ranked next to Trevor Lawrence and Vince Young as like one of the highest graded quarterbacks in our generation. I mean, he went out there and balled out, but the problem is man, like yeah, I read a tweet today from one of the analysts from CBS Sports. He said, "Is Quinn Ewers Tate Martell with a mullet?"
Oh no, not
And
too much. No.
and I felt it crushed my soul, man, because like we saw this with Tate Martell, because I mean he lit up high school, but then he got in the transfer portal and kept winding up in bad situations. And the thing with Texas for me is offensive line question marks again, skill position question marks outside of running back. I'm talking about the wide receiver spot on the outside. A year ago, Texas ranked last in the Big 12 in receiving talent coming into the season. That is so hard to overcome, even for good quarterbacks, man. And also, is our defense going to be able to make key plays when Kansas is putting up 50 points on you, man? Like, I don't think people understand the pressure that puts on a quarterback when every single drive you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, where it's like, man, if I don't get a touchdown, not bump a field goal, if I don't get a touchdown, we're probably down in this game. And so that's the question. And then also, just how is he going to fit into Steve Sarkisian's system? But I think playing at home, being more comfortable in the state of Texas, and also playing in a conference where really outside of Baylor, Oklahoma State, and we'll see what TCU looks like without Gary Patterson, possibly Kansas State, who's been building a solid defense. You're not going to face world beaters. Like, you're not going to face a Penn State defense, a Michigan defense, whoever. I mean, even hell, Iowa has a really, really good defense. So that's going to be what I'm going to see. But I think they'll lean on Bijan early. Week 2, we'll find out everything we need to know about Texas. When Alabama rolls up into Austin, we will find out everything you need to know about who Quinn Ewers is and who this Texas team is.
Golly, dude, RIP. Like, that defense for Texas is awful. God awful. Yeah. I do think they have a lot of good receiving talent. Worthy showed pretty well last year, as long as what is it, Whitlingham, Jordan Whitlingham, or Whitlinton, excuse me. As long as he could stay healthy, he's always produced pretty well out of the slot. They added a Wyoming transfer this past offseason, so I think they got talent. I mean, I didn't even mention Billingsley, who they bring over from Alabama. Hopefully, he gets his act together. So, yeah, I mean, I think they got talent. It's just he's going to have to be playing. He's going to be playing hero ball all year. That's the problem.
Yeah, I like that you guys bring that up, because a lot of times when people are looking at quarterback, it's okay. Well, what's around you? Well, also what's on the other side of the ball, because we see that all the time, and it gets talked about, like, how great a quarterback is, and a lot of people will bring up record, and a lot of people say, well, hey, quarterback, wins on a quarterback stat, but it affects your play too. I mean, if you're constantly down in games, what does that mean? It means you're down, you're trying to push the ball downfield, and it might look a lot worse for you. So I think it's really good that you guys bring that up. And when it comes to Texas and it comes to a team that has struggled, and there you can go and add certain pieces, you can have great players in certain spots, but if you're not a complete team, you're going to run into problems. And especially with quarterback being such a mental position, like, you have the weight, like you said, like the weight of the world on your shoulders. Every drive you go out there, and if you don't score, there's all that pressure. Oh, we're down more. Oh, we're down 2 scores now early on in games, and it can be tough. So I do wonder how that turns out.